What's up, everybody? My name is Kristen Mae Carbone, and this is You, Me, and Brie Makes 3, a show about cheese for cheese enthusiasts. Today, we're going to cover a little bit of the things that I didn't cover in the first two videos, some frequently asked questions specifically about cheese and cheese pairing. So let's get started. One of the first things I want to talk about is raw milk. Now, we talked about it a little bit last week in the cheese making episode. If you need to check that out and get a refresher, go right ahead and do that. I will be waiting here while you refresh your memory. In the meantime, let's talk about raw milk a little bit more in detail. So the TLDR is raw milk is unpasteurized. So pasteurization involves heating milk up to a certain temperature and keeping it there for anywhere for a second to 15 to 20 seconds, depending on how high the heat is initially. Raw milk does not do this whatsoever, so you're getting all the variants and unique characteristics that the milk can bring from that raw status. So the FDA puts limitations on the sale and import of raw milk cheeses. Any cheese that is made in the US or seeks to be sold in the US that is 60 days or less must come from pasteurized milk. No exceptions. So, younger Bries, camemberts, fresh cheeses, all of those must be made with milk that is either pasteurized or the cheese must be aged for 60 days minimum. This is for our own protection. However, Europe does not agree. Canada does not agree with these assessments. So if you want to have those cheeses, you'll have to go to Canada. You'll have to go to Europe in order to consume them. Anything younger, anything bloomy, fresh, that is all pasteurized. So what about raw milk cheese and pregnancy? Well, raw milk cheeses, raw milk in general, is one of those things that is often discouraged by doctors. Obviously, for the bacterial component, since the cheese is not pasteurized, there is that bacterial risk. If a guest comes in and says, I'm pregnant, I prefer pasteurized cheeses, that's fine. If they are pregnant and they don't care, that is also fine. That is their prerogative. But we do take that into account when making cheese plates. It is something worth looking into when you're buying cheeses, whether or not the milk is raw or pasteurizes, if that's of concern to you. Just do your best to be made aware, ask the right questions, and it should be very obviously labeled. One of the questions I get a lot is, I'm lactose intolerant, what are my options? And a lot of that depends on you and your body. So as I mentioned before, there are 4 types of milk: cow, goat, sheep, and water buffalo. And their lactose proteins are all different. So for some people, that means you can't have any cheese at any aging whatsoever, depending on the severity of your allergy. And some people can have a number of cheeses. It might just cause a little bit of discomfort, which means you can go from anywhere from, I take a lactate and I'm fine, to I really can't have any cow's milk. I can have some cow's milk as long as it's aged a number of years, because remember, in the cheese making process, that lactose is being converted the longer the cheese ages. They can just have sheep and goat. Some people can just have sheep. If it's absolutely hard, it needs to be aged at least a year. There are options. It depends on your comfort level in testing for those options. Some people, I recommend trying, sheep's milk is usually particularly comfortable for people when they're trying to test that out. Goat's milk is usually the next one down. Again, particularly harder things, people on the whole tend to do better with. Cow's milk is the one where it does get really tricky, particularly for the soft. But even sometimes the hard, because of the particular style of that protein molecule. It really just does depend on your body. But there can be options for you if you still would like to eat cheese and you do have some type of lactose intolerance. So one of the last things I wanted to leave you with is pairing philosophy. I'm obviously going to cover this much more in detail in later episodes, different cheeses, pairing them, etc. But there is the Easter holiday coming up this weekend for those who celebrate, or any other spring holiday party things you've got going on, Mother's Day. If you wanted some ideas, I thought I'd leave you with a little bit to get you started. So the first general philosophy is complementing or contrasting. Complementing looks like nutty cheese with honey roasted almonds, with a caramel butterscotch Gouda maybe going with a caramel popcorn, something very sharp and savory going with a mustard. Versus contrasting when you've got a creamy buttery cheese with a very citrus bright pairing, like a very mild American style brie with a lemon curd, or a light chèvre with a candied orange. That's something bright and citrus to go along with that. Those are two different philosophies that I use when I pair. When it comes to the wine aspect, generally speaking, we say what grows together, goes together. So, easy rule of thumb, if you're working with a lot of French cheeses, try to find out what region they're from, because from there you can find a wine from that region, and they'll generally go well together. It's not 100% perfect every time, but it's a good place to start to at least get pretty close. The complementing and contrasting thing also does work with the wine aspect as well, to some extent. Cutting through a really buttery, creamy cheese with a lighter, brighter wine can be a good thing. Also complementing, if you've got a really full forward cheese, you're going to want a wine that can hold itself up to it and not get buried under the cheese, or conversely have the cheese get completely drowned out by a wine. The amount of people who come in and ask me for something like a Brie while they're drinking a full spicy red is a thing that happens, and if that's what you want, I mean, I will give that to you. It's probably not my first choice of cheese. Exactly. I can have some bloomies that can go well with some fuller reds, but if you're going to ask me for the mildest, lightest, fluffiest little cheese I've got, and you've got a very, very big, bold red, you're probably not going to taste much, but that's your life. I'm not going to stop you. I'm going to be confused, but I'm not going to stop you. So if you can take these concepts, complementing and contrasting, and what goes together, put them together between your wine and your pairings and your cheese, you can make a really exceptional cheese plate. And I encourage you to think just a little bit outside the box. If you're scared to do anything too crazy, that's totally fine. It takes some practice working up to it. If all this seems a bit daunting, that's okay. Start small. Start just with 3 cheeses, just with 1 wine. And also with the pairings, think of going just a little bit outside on either side of what you're looking to work with. If you've got something nutty, maybe instead of nuts, trying a brittle or a caramel popcorn. If you've got something that would go really well with fruit, maybe instead of using regular fruit, use a candied orange peel or a confit or a curd or a preserve or something that's just a little bit outside the normal realm of what you might be wanting to use, but is still pretty close, so you don't feel like you're taking such a huge leap and a huge risk. And that is it for this week. I wanted to keep it short and sweet, to the point, because last week was, I know, a very long one, and I wanted to make it a little bit easier to get through this guy and learn and still have a good time. So I hope you did learn something. If you have any questions, please put them down below. Next week is a Q&A, so this is the time to ask any questions. If you have anything you want me to talk about that I haven't discussed already, I would be happy to do so. Leave any comments as well. If you enjoy this video, like and subscribe and share it with your fellow cheese enthusiasts. I'm always happy to talk about what I do, as you all know. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Kristen Mae Carbone, and I will see you next week.